Hello and welcome to this panel on making a real difference through law. I'm the facilitator and I'm the Associate Dean Learning and Teaching for the Faculty of Law. My name is Pete Black. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Turrbal and Yagara as the First Nations owners of the lands where QUT now stands, lands that were never ceded. We pay respect to their elders, laws, customs and creation spirits, and we recognise that these lands have always been places of teaching, research and learning. QUT also acknowledges the important role that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within the QUT community. I think it is particularly important for us to start every panel, every event, every meeting with this acknowledgement when we are here in the Faculty of Law. And that's because the institutions of law and justice have been used for many centuries to dispossess and to oppress our Indigenous Australians. And part of what is so central to our mission as the Faculty of Law here at QUT is ensuring that our graduates do everything they can, armed with the knowledge of law and justice, to address some of those inequalities that we have seen. And I think that's also particularly important given the nature of this panel here today, making a real difference through law. And that's something that we want all of our students to be able to do when they graduate from QUT. So, to facilitate or to have this discussion here today, we've got a range of people from the QUT Law School. We've got 3 students and 1 staff member who all provide, I think, some quite interesting and unique perspectives about what the law degree involves and how you can use that law degree to make a real difference in what you do, both while you are studying and also in your future careers. So I'll take a moment just to introduce the panel. So I'll start with Ben. Ben Quick is the president of the QUT Law Society and a third-year graduate entry law student who has a keen interest in film, philosophy, social justice and dogs. He's heavily involved with university organisations, he's volunteered at community legal centres, taken advantage of international opportunities and is lucky enough to be clerking with law firms both this year and next. He only started drinking coffee when he started studying law. Interestingly enough, that is something we share in common. I'd never had a coffee until I started studying law, and I have about 10 shots a day. He also can't seem to save himself, but claims to know all of the songs from the original Lion King.
That's true.
Well done. We've also got Zoe Nay. Zoe was awarded a Vice-Chancellor's Academic Scholarship to complete a Bachelor of Laws Honours at QUT, and also currently works as a research assistant with the Faculty of Law and the Institute for Future Environments. In this role, she has collaborated with multidisciplinary researchers to co-author academic articles and textbook chapters in the fields of environmental law, international policy analysis, comparative constitutional law, and human rights law. She's also studied international environmental law on exchange in the Netherlands and was selected to represent Australia at the 2019 Youth Assembly in New York to discuss youth leadership in the Sustainable Development Goals. Zoe is in her final year of her undergraduate degree and hopes to pursue a PhD upon graduation. Our next panellist is Kat, and if Kat Durante looks familiar, it's probably because you have seen her on TV in QUT's latest graduate campaign. This proud Waggadogum and Miriam Torres Strait Islander woman is currently studying a double degree in law and business and already works part-time as an intern in a commercial law firm. Kat is passionate about celebrating diversity and earlier this year represented QUT at a United Nations Peace Summit in Bangkok. She looks forward to dedicating her future legal career to the advancement of human rights and representing her community. And then the 4th panellist we have today is Lee Moy. Lee is not one of our students, but instead works for the faculty. She is the Legal Employability Specialist and Careers Advisor in our Faculty of Law. Lee's background is in legal human resources, and she has worked in the legal industry for over 25 years. Her role at QUT is all about connecting law students with legal industry, and she is passionate about helping students discover exciting legal career opportunities that unlock their full potential. So as you can see, a diverse range of perspectives on this important topic. So let's begin with this question. We might start with Kat. It's sort of frequently said that law affects every part of our lives. So how do you hope that you will be able to make a difference through your study of law and hopefully your future legal career?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. Law does impact every aspect of our lives. But when I was thinking about this topic, and I think you sort of worded it perfectly at the beginning of this discussion. The law can disproportionately affect a lot of communities and populations of people and attack their very humanity or sense of dignity as well. So in the context of my community for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, we're living in this time where there's been over 435 deaths in custody since the 1991 Royal Commission. We're talking about over-incarceration of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And also just yesterday, the age of criminal responsibility is going to be delayed for review. And prison is no place for a child. And that's another thing that disproportionately affects Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander youth. So for me, going into the legal industry and the profession, I'm hoping to be a meaningful advocate for humanity and for human dignity, particularly for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people when I do join the profession. Okay,
Ben, what's your sort of background? Why did you choose to study law and how do you see it sort of playing out?
Yeah, so I'm a graduate entry student, so my first degree was in philosophy, and I guess sort of doing a philosophy arts degree and sort of coming through my late teens, early 20s, my worldview sort of exploded and sort of saw a lot of injustices and things I sort of wanted to have, I guess, a more hands-on and practical impact in, and so law seemed like the tool for that. Sort of it gives you the understanding of the sort of the procedures and the systems that are like in place, sort of causing harm or doing good. And so having a law degree was sort of the way, or the ticket rather, to being able to take part and have an impact on all the communities I saw sort of doing it a lot rougher than I. Playing out, I would very much like to expand the role of pro bono work, both in the corporate and education sector. I think there's a lot of missed opportunities. And I think the space for that to grow is immense and will hopefully benefit the community as a whole pretty immensely.
Okay. And Zoe, you have a passion in the environment, obviously. Was that something that you had before you started studying law, or is that something you've sort of discovered since you commenced your studies?
No, definitely. I've always been a little bit of an environmental advocate growing up. I lived in Solomon Islands and East Timor growing up. My father worked with the Australian Federal Police Force and United Nations. So I sort of had different experiences of different cultures and how they interacted with the world around them. And I saw how it was different in a city in comparison to an urban area, a developing country in comparison to a developed country. And I think how I work in environmental law is looking at the intersection between human rights and environmental law and how they play with each other. So I like to look at how the environment impacts humans and how humans impact the environment in turn. And I think since I was a little kid, I've always been outside and playing. I went vegan when I was about 10, to my mum's demise. I had to cook my own dinners since I was young. So I think it's always been a part of me, and I've just taken that through into my law degree.
Okay, I might sort of turn to Lee now, because you approach this perhaps from a slightly different perspective, coming from a commercial legal sort of background. When you sort of talk to students about future careers in the legal industry, what do you find sort of drives and motivates our students?
So, because I deal with so many students, there are so many different things that motivate students to I guess, or gravitate them toward different areas of the law. Hearing what you guys are gravitated toward is amazing. Other students are gravitated towards a more corporate area of law. Some gravitate towards a more public sector, community, in-house. A lot of people want to go in-house. There are so many...
Could you perhaps just explain what in-house means?
Yeah, so, and I get that question a lot too, Pete. So an in-house situation is where a lawyer doesn't practice inside a commercial firm, so to speak. They individual organisations or companies have their own legal team that work right beside, the people who are manufacturing, for example, or doing other things within, like the accountants and things within a firm. So yes, so people like, and am I allowed to name organisations like
yes, of
Virgin
course.
Australia have an in-house team, BHP similarly, and even smaller organisations have in-house teams. The community sectors have in-house teams as well. So students are gravitated, or they gravitate toward particular things from what they hear and what perhaps they learn about at high school, which, you know, opens up a conversation for us to say, well, have you thought about this area? And there are so many different pathways that students can choose with the law, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I think that is true. I mean, we're seeing some very different pathways in this panel, and just, you know, I think in all of our conversations with students, you see that people have very different motivations, which sort of drives their study and their future careers. I want to go back to the students just for a second, really to think about what do you wish you had known when you started studying law? So you all approach this from a slightly different background, but you all had sort of an underlying passion or drive that was sort of bringing you to your law degree. What else do you wish you knew at the start? Kat, we might start with you.
Yeah. I've been really fortunate to do a few international experiences and things like that, and also work integrated learning, but I kind of wish I'd known about it a bit earlier, so I could have had those experiences earlier as well. So now that I'm approaching the end of my degree, I'm trying to figure out how I can jam pack all of these different experiences now into my final year, and there's simply just not enough time. So I think that's definitely something I encourage all new students to check out really early on, to make sure you've got time to partake in all those really cool things.
Right. Zoe?
So I think QUT does a great job at showing us the opportunities, but I think when I enrolled in law school, I didn't really connect that being a good law student was the same as being a good person, and I think I lacked some of the balance when I started law school. I went straight into studying as much as I could and thought I'd throw myself all the way into that, but I think the more that I balanced other areas of my life and prioritized people and looking after myself, the better that I thrived in studying, and I think that's something that sometimes that's not in the dialogue when we're signing up to different courses. We think that law school, that's our identity then, but I don't think so. I think you're a person first, and you'll always be a better law student and lawyer if you focus on working on yourself.
I'll come back and ask that same question to Ben, but I might sort of throw to Lee about that from your point of view, talking to our students and to law firms as they're looking for jobs. That balance between just getting good results and being a well-rounded person, and how important that is?
I agree with things that both of you guys have just said. There is so much to do while you're at law school, and picking up on those things early. I love to see students in their first year, second year, rather than their fourth year, final year, because I can talk them through all of the things that they need to do. Being a really balanced person and self-care and being good to other people and being that community and good to yourself is really important when you're eventually going out to look for a job, because when you're employed, people want to know that, you know, you haven't just been in the library, you know, slaving to the reading and the books. So I agree with both of those things that you've said. And yeah, students really need to think of a more holistic perspective when they're thinking about studying the law. Sure, it might be your identity for a little while, but don't let it overtake you, for sure.
So thinking then about some of those other opportunities that are available to our students here at QUT, Ben, that might actually be something you can help us with. You're the president of the QUT Law Society, which is sort of a student body for law students that provides a lot of these additional opportunities along with other parts of the university. Could you just sort of talk through about what some of those other things are apart from just hitting the books and reading and studying?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a plethora of opportunities. Actually, I will say there are too many opportunities out there. If you take them all on, you will likely burn out pretty quickly. So there is value in saying no. I definitely advocate for that. But as for what's available and also what's valued by employers, Lee, so a big one is extracurricular sort of competitions. So there's sort of like mooting and negotiations where you can sort of work on your advocacy skills as well as your like sort of soft sort of interpersonal skills.
I'm just going to stop you again and explain what a moot is and what mooting is, because not everyone is going to know that.
I'm just like, jumping straight ahead. Okay, so a moot is basically fake court. So essentially you'll partner up with someone, you'll be given a legal problem, and basically it's your job to sort of stand at the bench and advocate for your client. So there'll be some points of law which you get to argue about, you'll be given some resources, and it's essentially your job to get up there and sort of do your best Harvey Specter or I'm trying to think of the Legally Blonde character's name, but I can't. No.
Elle
Woods.
Elle Woods, yeah.
Elle Woods or Harvey Specter. So it's really,
Which is
fun.
a Suits reference,
Yes,
isn't it?
it is,
Yes,
yeah. So it's
See, I come from the Ally McBeal age, so that's always my sort of point of reference.
Apologies.
Yeah, I'm just showing my age.
I'm sure there's something else out now, though. I'm sure that's already dated. But it's a really good opportunity to not only like develop your skills as a student, but like meet new people as well. That's something that a lot of people who compete in these competitions find. It's that it's not a hyper-competitive environment. It's something where you actually go and you meet people and you sort of better yourself. And then you're also sort of ahead when it comes to studying a subject later down the track. So if you sort of get in early, you'll usually look at areas of law which you'll study later on. So you'll actually have a few steps ahead. So that's just one sort of portion or one sort of avenue of opportunities. The other ones are all the education and all the networking events. So there's just dozens of those throughout the year. They're fantastic to, again, meet people, sort of learn from more experienced students and also like professionals in the industry. We also run sporting events, so into sort of university touch, netball sort of competitions, and being a part of those teams is something that employers tend to look for, Lee. Like having all of these extracurricular things, although not too many, is certainly something that employers actively seek. And
Absolutely, and not only the the mooting and the competitions from a law society perspective, the sporting stuff, the secondments, the sessions that I run that are those extra things that where students can learn about getting their career on track. I often I do a session every year about doing judges associateships. There is so much, isn't there, Ben, to really...
Plus, there's the social events as well.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, maybe firms don't look for
you need
that
the balance.
so much.
That's where the balance comes in.
The social events are absolutely important.
It does. I'm going to be very bold and say, if you're over 18, QUT Law Society runs the best ball in Brisbane. So if you're at QUT Law and your time comes, I definitely recommend attending. Although this year will obviously be a little bit different. We'll sort of wait and see on that front.
So, given all of those opportunities that are there as part of your studies in law at QUT, for your own personal journeys then, what have you found to be the most empowering experience that you have had? Now, it could be, a brilliant lecturer. I understand constitutional law is very good, or it could be mooting, or it could be a competition. For those that don't know, I teach constitutional law. But what's been most empowering to you, Zoe?
So last year, I actually went to 2 lecturers and said I was really interested in research work. Could I edit one of their papers? That's literally all I was asking for. I just wanted to see what it was like, how to construct an article. And I worked with 2 researchers on a paper. And from there, they hired me as a research assistant. I've co-authored articles. Within a few months, they got me doing a presentation at an international conference on the research work we were doing. And I think being around a culture of researchers and colleagues who genuinely wanted me to succeed and saw QUT as a team was something that was so empowering for me as someone who wants to enter the field of academia and research work. It can be portrayed as a fairly competitive environment, as with law in general, but I think if you get a great group of people around you and mentors, the professors I work with are so excited to see someone else enter an industry that they're all really passionate about too. So if you just ask them questions and ask for opportunities, they're always more than willing to lift you up and give you a platform to be heard.
Kat?
I think for me, when I first moved to Brisbane, so I'm from far north Queensland originally, I felt like a fish out of water. Like I felt so out of place and I just felt like I was the only rural student. I was the only Indigenous student in the law school, but I think through connecting with my peers at the Oodgeroo unit and seeing just how many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander law students are coming through the ranks and joining the profession, that's really empowered me as well. Having those peers beside me and supporting me and advocating for each other, but also for future Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander law students. That's how I sort of found my place in the law school and found, a lot of empowerment as well.
Great. Ben?
It's similar to Kat in finding sort of a community that you connect with. So, little story I like to tell is on my first day in O Week, I remember going to like a panel that the society was running, and the vice president at the time sort of said, "Hey, is anyone doing the grad entry program?" I was like the only person to put my hand up. I didn't know anyone at QUT, and he said, "Come have a chat afterwards," and I did. And in that 5-minute chat, like the information I was able to get from someone like who'd been there, done that, was just so valuable, and it cemented, I guess, the idea of like connecting with peers and having that community around you. And just by doing that, the benefits you gain. So you can spend hours clicking through different websites or trying to find information, but like the real value and information you get, I think, is from those you're doing it with and those who've been there before. So yeah, connecting with peers has been the most empowering thing for me, I think.
Is that something you would have sort of expected before you started, or?
No. So, I mean, law is one of these things that's painted to be quite competitive, whereas I've had the exact opposite experience. I think QT is very special in that we've got quite a wholesome community, one that is really set on sending the lift like back down for the younger students or the more junior students. If you're in the library, so the law library, like it's very commonplace to see people who don't even know each other connecting over a subject or a topic. I've made lifelong friends here in the law degree, and it's even with people who maybe I wouldn't think I'd make that sort of friendship with, because maybe our views are so opposite, but just because of the culture of like respect and camaraderie that we have, I really have sort of connected with a lot of people, and I'm quite proud of the culture we have here as students.
Okay, so that's probably what surprised you the most. I don't know if you had any surprises when you sort of came and started at QUT compared to what you were expecting?
I mean, everything was a bit of a surprise. I graduated at 16, so I went into law. I turned 17 right before I started. And I mean, I was definitely shocked by a lot of things, but I think I was shocked by how much the tutors and the lecturers were willing to help if you asked, because in high school I was constantly told that you need to practice independent learning because when you go to university there won't be anyone holding your hand. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I really enjoyed high school. I loved studying and I was excited to start law. But I think I didn't realise that the lecturers and the tutors are there for you to ask. They're not going to come to you necessarily like a teacher will and ask where your homework is, but if you say that you need a hand, they're so excited to help. They want to connect with the students. And I think it took me probably about a year to get comfortable going up to the lecturers after they gave a speech and asking them questions or asking how they got into the field. So I think that was quite surprising that there are so many different support networks out there at university if you're just willing to ask and say you need a hand.
That's actually really delightful to hear, because I think it is really sort of true, especially with our staff here in the law school. Anyone who sort of expresses an interest or needs assistance or has questions, I think there is a really sort of strong culture around supporting them, and staff are really just excited when someone has questions or asks for support, because that's what we're here to do. I don't know if you share that, Kat, or if you've had some other surprises along the way.
I think my biggest surprise was just the diversity in areas of law that you can study, and then as I progressed through, the diversity in careers that you can pursue once you graduate. That was surprising. It seems like it's like this infinite sort of list of opportunities. Once I graduate.
I'm interested. I often ask this of students: is law something you always wanted to study? Even when you were a little child? Because I mean, it wasn't for me.
No, it wasn't. I was actually, when I was in primary school, I wanted to own my own cupcake business. So maybe that can be like a backup plan. No, it wasn't. It really wasn't. I think what motivated me to study law was I always knew I was passionate about social justice. So that was a continuous sort of, sort of passion of mine. It was actually a work experience in grade 11 in the District Court of Cairns that I gained the experience and sort of had a bit more of a broader understanding of what, the law meant and how it operated as well. And then also my Indigenous heritage also informed a lot of the reasons why I chose this profession. So yeah, it was a few things, but it wasn't always law. Wasn't always law.
Yep. So Zoe, obviously the environment's always been important for you, but was law the lens that you always envisaged you would make a difference through, or is that something you came to a little bit later?
So I think I was always quite set on law, but had a very different perspective of what law was and what my career in law would be. So I was always very good at arguing as a child and always told that I would make a great lawyer. And I think as I've progressed, I've seen that I actually prefer the research side of it. I prefer the concepts and the philosophy behind the law, seeing how it interacts with society and privileges some people and disadvantages others. Rather than being the face of it, I want to be the person behind making the policies and trying to change things proactively so the next generation comes through and has something different to work with. I think for me now, I see law as a storytelling profession. I think that law is language and it's how we shape the world around us. And it's not something that you can physically hold or see, but it's something that changes how we see people and the world and how we see ourselves within it. And I think that's what's exciting to me, is that it's not just about there's a crime and I'm trying to prosecute a person. It's saying, I see this issue in society and what can I do to make sure that people coming after me don't face this, or at least don't face it in the same way and have some more resources to deal with it.
Okay. Ben, you obviously didn't always want to be a lawyer because you studied something else first. So what then drew you to law?
I guess it was a bit of a natural progression. Phenomenal answer, Zoe. And I feel like that's what I would have said, but just far more less eloquent. So imagine that, but then I started with a philosophy degree and it was very much how can I actually implement some of the things that I've learned here and things I want to change? How can I actually do that? Don't get me wrong, you can make a documentary because the film was my other major, and that was sort of a direction I went for a little while. Then I was like, no, I sort of want something a bit more tangible, something that I can really sort of have an effect at sort of like the apex, I guess, of society. Everything in law sort of filters down to everyone else. And so being able to have an impact at that level was something I was really hungry for. So that's why I jumped on the law train.
See, I jumped on the law train because my mother made me. I wanted to be a journalist, and my mother, who is also a law academic actually at another institution, we won't mention them, but she talked me into adding the law on. So just do a double degree, why not do the law? And I discovered very early on that I was much more drawn to the study of the law and the impact that it can have upon all of our lives and upon society, and that's what sort of drew me to it. So I think it is worth sort of mentioning those double degree options that are out there with a range of different sort of disciplines. And Kat, your actual double degree is in the business faculties. How have you found being a double degree student and the variety and the sort of the extended exposure that you get to different ideas and disciplines? How have you enjoyed or found that as a student?
I'm really glad that I did the double. I think the varieties really complemented both the law and the business side. I've liked doing like 2 of each every semester for the last few years. And then there's just opportunities that arise within each faculty and potential connections that you can make from each faculty as well. So for me, it was a really great decision to do both.
Okay. I just want to change now the tack of the conversation a little bit and to actually just think through what advice would you give high school students now thinking about studying law at QUT? Are there any sort of tips or guidance, anything that you would pass on to a prospective student? Ben?
Don't do it just because you have the OP. That would be like my first thing to say.
I agree with you.
Yeah, so do it because you either want to practice law or you sort of want to get the skills that the law degree teaches you. I think a few years ago, someone sort of famously said that a law degree is the new arts degree. If that's true, then I welcome that comment. I think the law degree gives you skills. Actually, no, let me rephrase. Someone who's done an arts degree and is doing a law degree, I can tell you that they are very different. But the skills you get in the law degree will help you, professionally speaking, in a wide range of areas. Like, you don't necessarily need to go into law to do a law degree. I don't think that's the case at all. But it'll also help you personally. I think the way it makes you think, the way it makes you critical, and gives you the ability to analyse issues for what they are, I think is an incredibly important skill to have. So for high schoolers, if you want sort of one of those things, do the law for that reason. And the other piece of advice I would give you is join the Law Society. And a favourite sort of quote I have is, a smooth sea never made for a skillful sailor. So basically, when times are tough, sort of strap in, and that's going to make you a better person in the end.
Okay, no, I think that's good advice generally. Sorry?
So touching on that commerciality aspect, I think in my first year, I was genuinely scared because I was studying subjects like contract law and then going into corporate law, and I couldn't see myself in that environment. I was always really passionate about studying law, but that was something that just didn't really mesh with who I was as a person. And I think my message would be that there's so many more careers than just operating as a lawyer. I did some internships and I worked in a law firm, and I found it wasn't for me. And I think it's important to try that out. But there are other options. So I'm going into research work, but you can do work in the arts. You can go into so many different fields, and law will help you. I think the other thing I would say is question everything. There can be a tendency in law to read a textbook and write notes down from it, but you're not actually learning or critically analysing. You're just taking the law as it is. And I think there's so much opportunity in law school to improve the law and make your mark on society using the knowledge you have. So when someone gives you a legal principle, ask why it's that way and what other ways it could be if you saw a better world for it.
Yeah, no, I like that. A saying that I often use is assume nothing, question everything.
Yeah.
And I think that is a really sort of good mindset to have. Okay?
For me, when I was in high school, the greatest thing I did was complete a work experience. So I think for any high school students who are considering law, if you have access to the opportunity to complete a work experience, I would definitely recommend that, whether that's in the courts or at a firm or at a community legal centre. That will probably give you a good feel for what being a lawyer could be. But as Zoe mentioned, law is outside that space as well. There's opportunities for academic work and things like that.
Yeah. In terms of those experiences, I agree that's a great thing for prospective, high school students to do, but it's also a really important part of our course here at QUT in terms of giving students those sort of real life, real world sort of work experiences. I don't know if any of you sort of had any sort of experiences or opportunities that's come as part of your degree that you think has sort of really enriched both your study but also the way in which you approach these questions and the ways in which you would like to make a difference. So I don't know if any of you have had any sort of will or other sort of placement experience that you think has really sort of helped you achieve that?
Yeah, well, I was QT helped me prepare for a paid internship at Gaydens Lawyers, and that's through Career Trackers, which is an organisation that partners Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander uni students with a corporate partner. So I've been really lucky to be a paid employee of Gaydens for the last 4 years now. So since the end of my semester one of year one in law, and that's been a hugely rewarding and enriching experience that has definitely complemented my study and gave me some really valuable experience working in industry.
Yeah, and so you've already talked about the work that you've done with some academics in environmental law, but you've also had the opportunity to study overseas. So how did that come about, and what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so that was actually at the end of my first year of study. So I was still getting used to the whole environment, and I applied through QUT to Maastricht University in the Netherlands. And I actually got a scholarship to study there. So I went across in the Christmas holiday. It was winter there, very cold. And I studied international environmental law. And I mean, it was intimidating, as any legal environment is when you walk in. But this was a master's subject, so a lot of older people. And I just got thrown in the deep end and loved every second of it. I came back to QUT with a reinvigorated passion for what I was studying, more direction, and also I got to travel after I studied overseas, which I think helps you grow as a person and come back to the law definitely with fresh eyes. So it was probably one of my favourite experiences of my whole law degree, and I definitely recommend applying for overseas studying or internships as early as possible.
See you nodding along there.
Absolutely. Yeah, in my first year, I was lucky enough to be selected to go over to Hong Kong and attend the Asia Pro Bono conference there. So it's a big conference on pro bono that's held every year, sort of somewhere else in Asia. All the big movers and shakers are sort of there from around, and a lot of organisations. So the amount of information I gained in that 1 week sort of lit a bit of a fire, I think, in my belly to then come back and be like, all right, sort of pro bono is where I want to end up to some degree, or at least have an element of it in my career. So that opportunity was fantastic, and that was supported by QUT. And the other one was I did a similar sort of volunteer sort of placement program at Hub Legal out of the Nala, and that experience there for like almost a year was just not only eye-opening, but my skills increased quite a lot during while I was there. Yeah.
And Kat, was it earlier this year you went to Bangkok for that sort of UN Peace Summit? Could you sort of talk a little bit about that experience and how that came about?
So it was an application process through the QUT Faculty of Law, and the faculty sponsored 10 law students to go over. So that was an incredible experience. It wasn't anything that I could have imagined when I was first starting out my degree as an opportunity that would be available to me as a law student. So in February I was sitting in the UN in Bangkok as a delegate for Australia and for QUT, and met all these people from around the world, and it's just incredible. All fully supported by QUT and organised.
So I think we've had a really good discussion about what has sort of motivated all of you to your study of law and the opportunities that you've had. Let's just spend sort of a little bit of the time that we have left now thinking about what are your future plans. Now that you've sort of had this sort of introduction to law here at law school, and you've had these opportunities overseas and doing other sorts of things, what's your goal? Where is this going to take you, and what impact and difference are you hoping to make? Kat?
Oh, that is such a good question. I think we were talking about this just before the panel, like what is the end goal? And I don't know that I actually have a solid answer. And to be fair, as I progressed through my law degree, I think it's changed every semester, just due to the experiences or the knowledge that I've gained. But I think the impact, though, that I want to make on the industry is unchanged, and that's to sort of be an advocate for humanity and human dignity in the legal profession, to be a representative for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and to advocate on behalf of my people as well, to be a voice as well for less privileged and less empowered people. So I think in terms of a career or a job, that's unclear, but I've got those few, I think, guiding principles which will hopefully stand me in good stead to figure that out as I go.
I have absolutely no doubt. Absolutely no doubt. Ben, what's your 10-year plan?
Oh, do you want a day-by-day recap? Okay, so tomorrow, breakfast. No, it's not I don't have a set plan, and I think that's sort of the beauty of doing law at QUT, is that opportunities are quite rife in that you sort of don't really need to make a decision straight away. I'm lucky enough, I sort of actually said at the start, to be clerking, so I hope to see those opportunities through for a period, but I would be really keen to do 12 months at sort of a rural or sort of isolated community CLC. I think being thrown in the deep end.
So CLC, Community Legal Centre, sorry.
Community Legal Centre. They're usually sort of funded by the government and have sort of a lot of volunteers and sort of lawyers working there as well in the community. And I think being thrown into the deep end into a place that is generally pretty under-resourced, you're going to get a lot of experience. And I think it's going to make you a much better lawyer, sort of, I guess, having that rough and tumble sort of time in an area where you're sort of struggling almost to sort of do your best for that community. So to do that, and then afterwards, I mean, who can say? We'll see where things go.
Yeah, excellent.
So, like Kat and Ben, my plans have changed a lot throughout my degree. However, I've always been a little bit of a planner. So currently I'm in the process of applying for PhDs, which is an exciting process. And I definitely have a lot of help through QUT. All of the professors are really on board in getting my application together. So I'm hoping to do that, looking at the impacts of artificial intelligence on humanitarian governance. So definitely a niche area of law, but really interesting looking at the intersections with environmental law, human rights, and humanitarian law. So after my PhD, I'd love to work at QUT as a professor and teach the next generation of lawyers coming forward, and then hopefully working with international organisations like the United Nations and different NGOs on policy development. That's the goal. So step by step we're getting there, but all really exciting, and QUT has opened up so many opportunities for me to even have the knowledge that these different lanes are open.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. One thing that I've often reflected upon my own career in the law is that it hasn't always gone in necessarily the path that I expected or planned that it would, but it's been about taking advantage of and seizing those opportunities when they arise. And I think you've all sort of observed that there are lots of opportunities when you were studying law at QUT to take advantage of those moments and drive that next step of your career. I mean, this morning, the topic for this panel has been making a real difference through law. And I think we've had quite an interesting discussion about the various different journeys and pathways that you've all sort of taken on this. As we sort of conclude, I just want to give everyone sort of a final opportunity. If there's anything else you would like to say or comment on, or maybe respond to something else that's been said. So if there is anything that's been on your mind as we've had this discussion, if you haven't yet had the opportunity to bring it out, now is your chance. Not sure, you're shaking your head there, Kat, so Kat seems fine. Zoe or Ben?
I think I would say when going into law school, I think it's really important to be genuine. I think people talk about networking and that when you leave high school and go into university, you can decide who you want to be, no one knows you. And I think it's so important to be true to who you are in that transition, because it can be really difficult if you're not. And I felt like I didn't fit into some of the molds that I saw to be a law student. But there is no one mould. There are so many different people. It's so diverse at QUT that you can be who you want to be and fit in just the same way. And the same way I would say that make law a person-driven profession. People will frame it like party A and party B, or defendant, but they're not just that label. They're a person behind it, the same way that you're a person practicing. So I think humanising the profession is so important.
Yep, thank you. Ben?
As the future legal professionals, it's us that are going to shape the world. So I think get on board with that and come join us, and also join the Law Society. I recommend. It's only $10. It's a bargain. The deals you get, phenomenal.
All right, you're nothing if not on brand there, Ben. Thank you very much. Lee, any final thought?
I'm sitting on the couch with some really high achievers. You're all doing so well in your own right and as students at QUT, but there are students at QUT who haven't done an overseas placement and perhaps are doing, very, the mainstream law degree without all of the optional extras that the degree and the faculty can provide. And that's okay. There are still opportunities for students who follow that pathway. Perhaps they've got things going on outside of their studies, a full-time job perhaps, or a family, or whatever. There are still so many amazing opportunities, careers for people like that, The profession is, there's so many jobs out there. People often ask me, will I ever get a job in the law because, it's so flooded. I think there are enough jobs out there for all sorts of people in this profession and in this career. So that's what I would say. Don't turn away just because you think it's too flooded.
Okay, excellent.
I do have something
You do have
now
something? Excellent.
that I think about it. I think that law school and entering the profession, it can be a challenging place for some people. So making sure that you're always looking out for your mental health. And always putting that first, and making sure that you've got that foundation set, you've got those support networks in place, and you're not afraid to seek help if you need it. There's no shame in it. You need to have that solid foundation for anything that you have to do. So if that requires going to talk to someone professional, absolutely do that.
Yeah, no, excellent. I think that is Obviously, very important advice, especially given the disruption that we're seeing in the world around us at the moment. So thank you very much, Lee, Kat, Zoe and Ben for this conversation today. Hopefully you watching online have found it helpful, and it's given you a taste of some of the extraordinary opportunities and potential that rests with you if you choose to study law at QUT, or probably study anywhere else, although probably not quite as many opportunities as you'll get here at QUT. So thank you again, panellists. Thank you for watching, and I really do hope that we will see many of you who are watching join us at QUT next year. Thank you.